think it was you that coined the term entrepreneurial accounting. And I think it speaks to this whole awareness idea for entrepreneurs, because accounting, I think, is one of those blind spots that people have. So could you kind of share what entrepreneurial accounting is and why you came up with that?
Yeah, 100%. You bet. So like, to your point, if all you want to do is score touchdowns, be the quarterback, but don't call yourself the owner, right? Now, if you want to call yourself the owner or the CEO, then you got to know what that playbook looks like, because it's different than what's wrapped around the quarterback's forearm when they're calling blue 34. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. So what I noticed was there's this gap. Like, I despised bookkeeping. I kind of despised accounting. I hated calling my accountant because every time I'd go to talk to the guy, he would make me feel dumber, and I had more questions than answers by the end of the session. Right. So, getting all the way back to my why reason around surrendering, there was just this day when I was like, oh my God, I just have to learn accounting. And I hated every bit of it. I hated it. It took me 4 years, and I spent $100,000 crisscrossing North America, studying with masters, and even going back to University of Alberta and taking night classes in accounting. And like, normally I'm a front and center kind of guy. Like, I'm there and I ask more questions, my hands flying up. Like, I ask more questions than the rest of the room combined. Not in accounting class. I was terrified and ashamed. So I was in the back corner, like hiding. By the fourth or fifth class, I was there dead center, and I actually got 100% on my midterm. And I started realizing, oh my goodness, this is not the scare. What is going on? Like, this is not the big, like, how can my experience of being in this accounting class be actually really positive? Yet every time I call my accountant, I feel like an idiot. How does that happen? Right? This is what I realized, Kirby. There are different kinds of accounting. And accountants are trained to file your tax return, so they got to learn the tax code, right? You as the entrepreneur, you don't need to file your tax return because you have your accountant, right? So when we get into like statutory amendment 3856 from page 38,422 from the tax code, like, whoosh, you do not need that as an entrepreneur. That's why you have your accountant. Now, accountants play a second really important role. Like 99% of the time, accountants play these two roles. One is file your taxes, and second is to make sure that you don't go to jail, right? Making sure that you are within, that the black is black enough, the white is white enough, and you're not getting caught in the wrong shade of gray kind of thing, right? With what you're writing off and whatnot. So it's like, that's like 98% of accountants do just those two things. I put just in air quotes, not to say it's not hard work. It is hard work. Okay. Nobody ever taught them, though, how to help an entrepreneur make a decision based on tax return, income statement, it's actually not even the tax return. It's income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flows, right? Likewise, we as entrepreneurs, nobody ever taught us how to speak like an accountant, right? Or be able to use the words like, what's the difference between revenue and gross profit? What's the difference between gross profit and net profit? Is net profit, net income the same thing or two different things, right? And like, we oftentimes hear things where it's like, oh, I want to be a millionaire, so I'm going to build a six-figure business. Hold the phone. Millionaire, that's assets minus liabilities, and the number is greater than $1 million on your personal balance sheet, okay, your personal net worth statement. Building a six-figure or seven-figure business, that's not balance sheet, and that's not your personal situation. That's an income statement line at the very, very top. We sold $1 million of revenue, or we collected $1 million in rents, or whatever the case might be. It's not a balance sheet, and it's not personal. And yet we as well-meaning entrepreneurs, business owners, we confuse the whole thing in one big massive blender. And now we wonder, what the hell is my accountant telling me, and why don't they understand me? Now, this is the other thing. Accountants have had to self-preserve for a very good reason. Because we entrepreneurs despise dealing with bookkeeping and accounting, we avoid their calls. We delay until the last minute to do our taxes. We make our phone calls with them as short as possible. And we don't even care if it's accurate. Just get it done, get it filed. Imagine if you had, and I mean this really, imagine, Kirby, if you had, say, 250 clients that you worked with year round, and none of them ever wanted to talk to you, and they thought you were like the plague. Okay. I promise you're going to do the bare minimum to just be able to stay alive. You know what I mean? And just to like do that, like we just got to get this like filed, right? So it's like no one's at fault here. Entrepreneurs aren't at fault. Accountants aren't at fault. Bookkeepers are not at fault. No one just ever gave them a bridge to walk across, right? And so after I went through 4 years and spending $100,000 and going through what were some just like frustrating, uncomfortable moments, I went, we got to simplify this. Like, I'm so lucky that I'd recovered from my illness. I'd paid off my debts, and I'd gotten to a point where I could afford the time and the money to make that kind of investment. How can I make this easier on other people? And so I took everything I learned from 4 years. I stripped out what felt unnecessary, and I got down to, and I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney. Okay. So always keep those people still on your team. This does not replace that. The Know Your Numbers course is in 3 days. What is the bare minimum that an entrepreneur needs to learn, so they don't have to suffer year after year after year after year, nor do they have to spend 4 years, $100,000 flying all over God's green earth trying to figure out how to stitch this thing together.